Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hi, my name is Richard Dix, and this is How Did That Happen? A podcast where I look at everyday things or events and try to figure out how they came to be. Every week I will research one topic, and by the end of the episode, I hope to truly have the answer to the question, how did that happen? This week we discuss GPS, the Global Positioning System. Our story starts in Soviet Russia with a stop in Maryland before heading across the whole world. Get ready for another episode of How Did That Happen? In order to explain the invention of GPS, we have to talk about what the Doppler effect is, because that is what the scientists used to understand that GPS was even possible in the first place. The Doppler effect has to do with the compression or stretching of any light or sound waves in relation to an observer. A well-used example is that of an emergency siren that sounds different depending on its proximity to you. It's getting louder when it's closer and softer when it's further away. The louder siren sound is a compression of sound waves as it comes closer, and the softer siren sound is the stretching out of sound waves as the siren increases its distance from the observer, basically. So as it passes you, it's getting further away, it's stretching out the sound, which is why you hear less of it. GPS essentially began with the launch of Sputnik in 1957, but not quite. I mean, kind of, but for those who may be unfamiliar with Sputnik, I'll give you a brief overview. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched a satellite into space. It was the first man-made satellite to exit the atmosphere and actually orbit the Earth. It was about the size of a beach ball, and it stayed in orbit for 3 months and made like 1,400 orbits around. And they're definitely finding pictures of it online, videos. It is beach ball size with like some antennas coming off of it, and it's pretty cool, actually, when you think about it. And when you look at space travel overall, which we'll talk about more as we go on, you see the Russians actually were pretty advanced. It's not so much advanced as they just seem to do everything a little bit before the Americans, if you look at how the space race boiled down. So 3 days after Sputnik is launched, there are two physicists by the name of William Geyer, hope I get that right, and George Wyffenbach, no, I definitely didn't get that right, at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, who decided to start tracking the satellite by its radio signals. While tracking the radio signals, they realized that those signals acted just like the siren does in the Doppler effect example, meaning it compressed and it stretched with the movements of Sputnik. When they realized they could do this, the reverse engineering occurred to them as well, meaning that if they could track a satellite this way, then a satellite could track a position from outer space. This is the light bulb / idea that is the Global Positioning System. A year later, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as ARPA, and later known as DARPA, yeah, you heard that right, DARPA. If you don't know about DARPA, they are an independent arm of the Pentagon that works on defense technologies, and they are developing a lot of crazy things and have tried a whole lot of other things that didn't work out, and they will tell you about it. Some of them, you can go on the website and see they're doing things like mind machine technologies and all different things. But they were ARPA, and ARPA is one of the founding companies, if not basically the founding company of the initial satellites that are GPS. They use this principle to create the world's first GPS. They named it Transit and launched it in 1960 to work with the military, specifically the U.S. Navy, even more specific than that, and their ballistic missile system that they were creating, which needed technology like this to run in the first place. And that still doesn't make sense to me. How how the military develops a missile system that they don't have the technology for, and just hope that it comes along. By 1968, there are at least 36 satellites floating around out there. At this time, the precision was within about 60 to 120 feet. What I read put it in meters, but being the good American boy that I am, I did a rough calculation, and that's what it came to. If I'm wrong, I'm sure you guys will let me know. The article said tens of meters, for the record, if anybody wants to look into that. The initial GPS would come to be known by a litany of names: Transit, Timation, Navstar, to name a few. Navstar specifically was instrumental in the progression of the global positioning system. In 1983, Ronald Reagan authorized the use of Navstar for the civilian airline personnel to improve air travel. And specifically, there was an incident where a Korean plane, aptly named Flight 007, was shot down by Soviet fighter jets off the coast of Alaska because it unknowingly flew into prohibited Soviet airspace. This was still during the Cold War. Everyone in the airplane died. The government was skeptical about providing this technology to the public, beforehand, and due to the terrorist implications, they didn't want people to have this kind of technology and use it against them. But issues like Flight 007 really forced their hand. So they added, when they finally released it to the public, they added what is called selective availability, which made the GPS less accurate in non-military situations. 6 years later, handheld GPS units were on the market for the price of about $3,000. I looked it up, and $3,000 back then is like $6,700 now. And I could not imagine spending almost $7,000 on something that the government is purposely making less precise. But I'm probably doing it already. In 2000, the government finally got rid of selective availability, which then allowed the GPSs to be more accurate. And this makes a lot of sense when you think about it. When GPSs first came on the market, is it GPSs or is GPS usually single? I don't know. But the joke was like, the people who drove, with those in their car, they were always lost, or they missed their turn. And it's like, maybe it wasn't all like, like a joke. Like the government literally was giving us less than accurate data. Transit, the immediate precursor to GPS, was retired in 1996. The Department of Defense runs GPS, and it now offers up to 7 meters of accuracy, which, again, rough calc for America, that's about 20 feet. They do this by having what's called a constellation of satellites that work in tune with each other, emitting signals that help provide time and location. The current GPS constellation is 31 satellites. Our GPS is not the only one up there. There are other constellations of satellites that provide the same service for other countries. They do work together. There's an international coalition of basically satellite navigation that all the countries kind of share information and allow the other countries to use their satellites. But there are actually different ones, and there's only 31 that are actually American DoD GPS. So I found that, so I will list off a couple to you real fast. So the Chinese one is called BDS, like BDS, just so people know, like they didn't name their satellite after the big Korean band. But yeah, like it's actually Beidou something, but yeah, like the abbreviations are BDS. The EU has one, and they call theirs Galileo, which I just feel like it just feels like a little much over there with that. And India has theirs, has one, and so does Russia. They all have one. Japan has one as well. And I guess you're just not cool, geopolitically speaking, until you have your own like satellite guided navigation system. But that's pretty much how GPS happened. It started when 2 physicists in Maryland were tracking a Soviet satellite. And from there, it was basically optimized by the government for the military before being released to the public in its fullest form around the turn of the century. And now it's time for another segment of Things I Didn't Know Before. All right, some things that I didn't know before. This one pertains to the Doppler effect. I was talking about discovering planets and found out that 442 of the 473 known exoplanets were discovered using the Doppler effect. So it is actually a very handy tool. And I'll be honest, before this podcast, I didn't know what the Doppler effect was. Only thing I knew about Doppler was that you hear about it on the Weather Channel, or when like your local news is bringing up what's about the weather, like the rain and stuff, But so I found out that's pretty interesting. The first GPS enabled phone was called a Benafon Escape, and it was released in 1999. And when for Escape, they used the ESC, like the keyboard, so they're trying to be all like trendy. So that was the first phone on the market that had GPS in it. As we know now, pretty much every phone has GPS in it. one thing I learned, which one of the last things we talked about, was that there is more than one GPS out there, or there's more than one constellation of satellite guided navigation, basically, and that they're almost varies country by country, and that they work together like a big coalition of satellites. I did not know that. Like, I can honestly say, like, with the rubber out of the rubber tree, and I thought it was black before in episode 2. I thought that GPS was GPS, and like every satellite was GPS. So that's new to me. Another one is that the first human in space was a man by the name of Yuri Gagarin. He was a Russian cosmonaut who orbited the planet once in a mission that lasted just under 2 hours. And last but certainly not least in this segment is that the Soviet Union also put the first woman in space in 1963. The U.S., by contrast, wouldn't put the first woman in space until 1983. Her name was Sally Ride. Pretty cool name. But, 20 years after the fact, we would never probably give the Russians credit for being too progressive on too many subjects. But, they were 20 years ahead of us from putting a woman in space. All right. That wraps up another episode of How Did That Happen? Thanks for tuning in. And as always, you can find more information on Twitter at HDTHappen. Once again, I've been your host, Richard Dix, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for listening.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.